Hello everybody, I hope all of y'all are having a good day today. In John chapter 8 verse 44, Jesus is really letting the Pharisees have it, and he says, you belong to your father the devil. You want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies. All right, it reads there, it says that you're of your father. Now he's talking to religious men, and he's saying you're of your father the devil. And remember, the devil is Satan. Okay, he's the accuser. Look at the definition of devil here. It's a slanderer. Okay, it's somebody who points fingers, finding faults. But it also is someone who tries to sever a relationship. Think about that, sever a relationship. It's somebody who's trying to bring you out of the spirit to get you to leave your first estate, which is in a spiritual higher place, trying to get you to leave that estate and bring you down to a lower state of consciousness, into a religious carnal mindset. All the things that are outside of love. It's all this, don't touch this, you can't eat that. It's the law. It says he's the father of lies. And remember, in the garden, the wisest beast of the field, in Genesis 3:1, he was tempting Eve. And it's like, are you sure? God said don't eat of that tree of good and evil. He said, because if you do, you'll know good and evil, and you'll be like God. Remember, he's a liar. He was trying to sever that relationship that he knew Adam and Eve had. He couldn't have that. Religious people don't want you to have a connection to the Father. They want you to have a connection to their doctrinal belief, because that's all they have. They don't have that connection that you have. You remember, God told Adam and Eve, he said, the day that you eat of that fruit, you'll die. He was talking about a spiritual death. That relationship that they have was severed. And that's where real life comes from, is from Christ within. So whenever you lose that, you die. It's a spiritual death. And that's what the father of lies is. He was a murderer from the beginning. From the very beginning, religious people started attacking God's people, trying to bring them down to their level. If you'll notice in the Bible, there's a lot of repeating stories in there, but there's one particular story that repeats quite often, and that's the story of someone who had everything, they lost it all, and then they get it all back. You know, it's all about reconciliation. You look at Job, he had it all, he lost it all, and then he got it back double. You know, there was the prodigal son. He was with the father before, he left, found himself just wanting to eat what the pigs has. Then he went back to his father, and he was accepted. He came back to his father. It's the same story repeating over and over and over. And I showed you guys in Ephesians 1 verse 4, where God says, I chose you, or he chose you from within him, or from in him, before the foundation of the world, before he laid the foundations of the world. It means you come from within God. Look at the definition of that word, from in. You came from God. You were in a higher state before. And for some reason, we came down here, and I hadn't figured all that out yet. Sometimes I think this is just a game that God likes to play, and we come here voluntarily, I don't know, and it's all about just finding home, getting back home. And all those who are the Father will get back home eventually. It's like just a big journey. It's something to do. That's the way I look at it anyway. But it says we were with him before, from within him before. So we just don't remember. It's like you have amnesia. Okay, but we came from that higher place before. Then we come down into this lower place. We start thinking in a carnal mind. And then you come back. Whenever you come to know Christ, whenever it is no longer you who live, but Christ who lives in you, when you spiritually die to yourself, that carnal, that beast nature, and you let Christ, real life, rise up from within you. Everything is about the cross. If you look at where Jesus was crucified and buried, it's Golgotha, the place of the skull. I've repeated this over and over and over. It's the place of the skull. It's your skull. It's an actual place. It's Golgotha. It's an actual place where Jesus was crucified and buried. Okay? It was a cemetery, a garden, and a place of sacrifice. It was just outside the walls of Jerusalem. Everything is about that. It's your skull. Everything that Christ went through is a mirror of what you go through spiritually. Okay, you're on that cross too. Remember, it is no longer I who live. I have been crucified with Christ. So you go through all of that spiritually to be reborn, to get back to that higher state of consciousness. Golgotha in Latin is Calvary, and it means shaved head, or bald head. And remember what Paul did? He shaved his head for a vow. All this stuff is mirror. You got to look at it deeply. Remember, Jesus told his followers, his disciples, he says, to you I give the keys to the kingdom, but to them, the other people, the religious people, all they'll get is parables. All they'll see is stories. They can't understand the deep meaning of things. All right, but Paul shaved his head, and remember, that was part of a vow. And what they would do is like a vow of the Nazarene. They would shave their heads, and then they would let their hair grow. And remember, Samson, he had long hair, and that he thought, that's the way I see it, he thought that his strength come from his hair. And remember, he looked at that prostitute, he slept with that prostitute. Remember the great harlot in Revelations? It's religion, okay? He slept with that religion, and they gouged out his eye, and then they put him to grinding. They put him on the grinding mill, working the works of the law. But they put him on that, and in the end, remember, he had everything, he lost it all, and then he gets it all back. And he found out that his strength wasn't really from his hair. His strength came from within. See, the hair is something you can touch, you can see it in the mirror, but his real strength, his true strength, come from within him, from God within him. He got humbled. And what he do? It says he killed more people in his death than he did in his lifetime, meaning because of that sacrifice. It's no longer him who lived, Christ who lived in him, Christ who lives in you. So whenever you die to yourself, you're going to tell that story. You're going to tell people about that love that you've experienced because you've become a beloved. And there's going to be many people spiritually die to get a spiritual rebirth, to get real life. Remember, Satan, the accuser, was a murderer from the beginning. He was murdering people, taking their spiritual life, tricking them into a carnal life and thinking they had life in that, and they don't. Remember, Jesus told them, he said, you think you have everlasting life because you have those scriptures and you study them every day? He said, but you got to come to me to have that. And those people didn't want to lose their life. They didn't want to give up their life because they know that whenever Christ rises up in you, it's no longer about you anymore. And they liked their lives. They liked that power that they had. Anyway, it's all about Golgotha, the place of the skull. I love you all. God bless.